Hi, I'm Vtuber Flye, and Blender 4.4.0 just released, so I figured I'd start this new tutorial series on how to use it. I'm going to assume you've already installed it and run it and come across a screen that looks like this. This is, of course, the splash screen where you can start a new file or open the previous one. This specific version of Blender features art of the Academy Award-winning film Flow, which was made with Blender, so maybe you can win an Oscar too if you follow along. We'll start with a new general file, so click the word that says general right here. This drops us into the default scene with a default cube, a camera, and a light. You can see them listed up here in the top right. Now, if you're a bit overwhelmed with all this text and all these buttons everywhere, don't worry, you only need to interact with the things you will be using. Now we're actually going to be speeding things up a bit for this part of the series, and we will be taking it slower later. But for this introduction, I just want to introduce you to the main actions and keyboard shortcuts you'll be using. If it gets too fast, pause the video, then repeat the action on your own in your own copy of Blender until you've understood the action. Are you ready? Then 3, 2, 1, go. If you pay attention to the very bottom left of your screen, you can see that the mouse can do things. For example, we can select things with left click. So I just selected the camera. Now I selected the light. And back to the cube. Next it says middle mouse rotates the view, but you may be clicking the middle mouse button and nothing happens, because you have to also move the mouse while holding the middle mouse button down. And as you can see, that rotates our view. Finally, the right mouse button brings up options, but we'll get into those later. For your benefit, I've added this representation of a mouse here. It will also tell you what keys I'm pressing. Now, let's say I wanted to move this cube, or any object really. For that, you can press G for grab. And you can see it's now moving along with your mouse. To put it down, you just left click. Now from this angle, it looks like it's resting on the floor. But if we rotate our view, it's actually floating in the air. Get it back to where it was before by undoing. We press Ctrl+Z, and we just wanted it to slide across here, which is the Y axis. Or after pressing G, you can press Y. And there we go, it's only moving across the Y axis. Of course, you can press X to move it along the X axis, and Z to move it along the Z axis. You can press R for rotation. Similarly, you can use the axis keys, X, Y, and Z, to only have it rotate in a certain direction. You can press R and R again, and this will give you a different sort of rotation. Just choose the one that's best for you. Finally, we have S for scale. Not like the scales on my tail. This is making things bigger or smaller. And of course, it works with the axis keys as well. So X, Y, and Z. You can press Shift+D to duplicate an object, or Alt+D to make a linked duplicate object. You might be wondering what the difference is. I mean, you can scale this object, and it's not affecting any of these ones. And you can scale this one, and it's not affecting this one it's supposedly linked to. But if we edit this linked cube, as an example, I'll just enter edit mode with tab, and I'll move this vertice or corner of the cube, and you can see that's affecting our original cube. But it's not affecting this one because it's not a linked duplicate. Let's get back to the default scene. We can hit the Blender icon in the top left here, head to the splash screen, and make a new file, not saving our changes. Next, we can press H to hide things, and Alt-H to unhide them. This has the same effect as opening and closing this eye in the top right here. So we can also hide the camera and the light. This toolbar here in the top left also has some alternate ways of doing things. If we press the third button here, we get another move tool. So instead of pressing G, you can play around with clicking and dragging the stuff here. And there's also rotation and scaling tools. Also one that combines all three for good measure, the transform tool. So you got rotation, you got scaling, and you got moving. You might think T is the shortcut for getting this transform tool, but it actually just hides this toolbar. We can bring it back again with T. You can also rotate the view by clicking and dragging on these axis circles here. But now you might be wondering, what's with this tiny arrow pointing left? Well, if we click on it, we get another sidebar, different to the one over here. And we can hide it and show it again with the shortcut N. So that's more stuff we'll look into later. So don't worry about those sidebars for now. But something you should worry about is saving. So we can obviously file, save, and of course the shortcut is Ctrl+S. And let's say I named this one test 01 and save. Now we can use this save incremental button, which was grayed out earlier. The shortcut is Ctrl+Alt+S, so let's try that now. And now that's saved test 002. It's good to save incremental versions of your files like this, so you can always go back to an old one if you break anything in a later file, or maybe you just want a record of your progress. Let's bring up another menu now, the Quick Favorites menu, and you can get that with Q. But as you can see here, there's nothing in the menu at the moment. That's because you should add your own favorite tools into that menu when you want quick access to them. Maybe I want the move tool in that menu, so I'll just right-click the move tool in the toolbar here and add to quick favorites. Now when I press Q, the menu has the move tool in it. That was just a quick example. We can remove the tool just like that. To delete things, we can hit the delete key or press X, and this brings up a confirmation first. So yes, we do want to delete this, and it's gone. We've seen Ctrl+Z for undo, but how do we redo? Let's move something over here, undo that, and then Ctrl+Shift+Z for redo. When moving things, you might have noticed it's been a bit too smooth. What if you wanted to place the cube on the ground like so? Well, you can see if you just did it manually like that, we're not really exact. There's all these decimal places. We want it exactly on the floor. You could enter in the number here, so 1 meter up, and now it's exactly on the floor. Another way would be to enable snapping. Let's click on one of these axis circles to make it easier, as that will bring us into a flat view. The one I clicked, the X, will bring us into the right orthographic view. This is different from the right perspective view, which would look a little something like this. In fact, if you go back into the orthographic view and click on this grid, we can swap between them. You don't have to know what the word orthographic means. Just think of it as a more mathematical way of looking at things. So let's enable snapping. We'll grab it with G, and as you can see, it's a bit too smooth now. But if we press Shift and Tab, now it's snapping to the grid, and we can move it exactly where we want onto the floor, and we have the same numbers as when we tried this before. So that's an example of snapping in action. If you don't want to toggle snapping with Shift+Tab, you can hold Ctrl to temporarily enable snapping. With, without. Say I duplicated the cube, and now our copy is named cube 001. And that might get a bit confusing because this is our first cube, not this one. So you can hit F2 to rename. I'll name this cube 2. And now we have cube and cube 2. Of course, they can be set to any name you want. So we have our cube and the cube named any name you want. And you can see it defaults to alphabetical order here. We've seen what F2 does. What does F3 do? It gives us a search menu where we can search for any tool we want. For example, if we want to add a cylinder to this scene, we can type in cylinder, and this looks like it will do the thing we want. So click on that, and there's our cylinder. Now it looks a bit blocky, right? If we go into edit mode with tab again, you can see this is not a perfect circle. It's actually made out of rectangles. See, we can take these vertices and move them like so. But they're spaced in a way that sort of makes them look like it's a circle. If you want to pretend it looks smoother than it is though, we can right-click and shade smooth. And now smooth shading is applied. You can see the location of this light does not currently affect the lighting on our objects. This is because we have solid viewport shading, which is this circle here. We can go to wireframe shading, which shows all the edges to our objects. The last one we can look at is our render preview, and this one is affected by the light source. So if we move this light source, you can see the shadows on the objects changing accordingly. But this is not our final render. For that, we hit F12. It's taken from the camera pointing at our scene. If we move the camera and hit F12 again, now you can see we have a render from this angle. You can hit this camera icon here to see exactly what the camera sees. We've had a look at switching between perspective and orthographic view with this grid button here, and we've switched into the camera's view with this button here. What does this hand and magnifying glass do? Well, if you click and drag on them, you can pan around like so, or zoom in and out. These are the same effects as holding Shift, pressing the middle mouse button and moving around, or scrolling the scroll wheel for zooming. Are there keyboard shortcuts for what clicking on these circles do? Yes, we can get a front view by pressing 1 on the numpad. Not 1 on the top left of your keyboard. 1 if you have a numpad. And as you can see, this is our front orthographic view. Press 3 for the right orthographic view. Numpad 5 will have the same effect as clicking on this grid to switch between perspective and orthographic. Numpad 7 for top view, and hold Ctrl and press Numpad 1, 3 or 7 for the opposite views. So Ctrl and Numpad 1 for back view, Numpad 3 for left view, and Numpad 7 for bottom view. Cheeky. What if we're really far away from an object like this and we want to zoom right up to it? Well, we can click that object and press numpad period to frame the selected object in our view. And if you have a large selection, press numpad period again, and as you can see, they all center into view like so. You can also press home to frame everything. One other thing we can do is press the tilde key, which is the key below your escape key, to bring up a navigation pie menu. And you can just highlight the view you want, like the front view, click on that, and now we're back in the front view. Let's say we want to select everything. If you do want to select absolutely everything, press A. And press A twice to deselect. We have a lasso select tool, which you can do by holding Ctrl and right-clicking around the object you want. Pressing Z will bring up a shading pie menu, and that's the same options as in the top right here. So we can go to our rendered view again, and lighting effects are seen. Shift+Z toggles into wireframe, and if you want to know what this thing here in the middle is, it's our 3D cursor. We can place it by pressing Shift and right-click. And now when we add new objects, they will appear at the 3D cursor. I've cut the monkey in half to demonstrate the mirror tool. You press Ctrl+M, click. See this text that says mirror here? Click that, and then you can tick these boxes to flip it around. You can press Ctrl+J to join objects together. So if I select this monkey half, hold Shift and click on the cube, and then Ctrl+J, now they are one object, the cube, and they will move, scale, and rotate together. Well, we've passed the 15-minute mark. The last thing I think I should showcase is subdivision. The next part of the series focuses on sculpting, so say I wanted to sculpt this cube. So you might think we can just head straight up to sculpting in the top here, and then begin to sculpt it out. But as you can see, as I sculpt, it's only affecting the corners. This is because back here in edit mode, we can see this cube only has vertices at the corners. So let's undo all our sculpting. And we'll get into all of these tools later, but just as an example, you might think, oh, this tool looks like it will cut our thing in half. And now we have vertices in the middle we can work with. We can just keep doing that then. And on this side too. And now when we sculpt, you can see we're pulling those vertices out, but we're still not getting anywhere. We'll just have to keep cutting, right? Cutting down these sides and keep going like that. And down here, now we're getting somewhere. And here's what it looks like with smooth shading. Okay, so for more detail, make more cuts, right? Wrong. There's an easier way. Let's get the cube back to the way it was. And from object mode, we can just press Control and any number from 1 to 5 on the top row of your keyboard, not the keypad. We'll try 5. And our cube has become a sphere. But you can actually see all those individual vertices reminiscent of making cuts into our cube. It becomes a sphere because we're using a method of subdivision known as Catmull-Clark subdivision. If you recognize the name Catmull, he's one of the co-founders of Pixar. We also have simple subdivision method, and this would be the same as making those cuts as before. But back to Catmull-Clark, and if we press this down arrow here and apply our subdivision, and enter edit mode, we can see we've got all this detail in our object now with all these vertices, and we can do some much better sculpting. If we undo and switch to simple and apply that, you can see, yes, it's just like if we made manual cuts. But that's all for this part of the series. I hope you'll join us for the sculpting lesson in the next part. Vtuber Flye out.